everyone. Welcome to the next episode of Contact Lost, the podcast from Poland about competitive Warhammer 40k, talking all things about Polish meta, but not only. To that end, if you like our content, please visit and follow our profiles on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. That's where you can follow us fairly easily. Obviously, we're also on most, if not all, of the podcast platforms, and mainly that's probably Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And you can listen to us there and let us know if you like our content or if you want us to go away. Today, with me, you have your usual host, Tweak.
Hi, guys.
And two very special guests. So guys who've been before on the podcast and are pretty much running the Polish national team currently. So that's Typhus.
Hello.
And Duda.
Hello.
Hi guys, and I'm Joker, which I have not mentioned, but yeah, and that might not be so much important. Anyway, right. So I won't be saying too much about our guests today because they've already been here a couple of times. So if you're not listening to us for the first time, you probably know them. So we'll just jump straight to the topic at hand, and the topic is the state of the meta and well, the Polish national team and the preparations for the WTC, which hopefully will happen next year. Starting off, Typhus, I'd like to ask you, as you're the acting captain, as far as I know, can you tell us anything interesting happening behind the scenes at the WTC? I know there are sometimes terrain packs. Obviously, the FAQ gets revised every now and then. So, anything exciting that was being voted recently?
There was a longer vote about all the things that people want about scoring, terrains, etc., etc. So we had a longer vote on that, which resulted in people thankfully despising asymmetric terrain and actually deciding on playing on those packs that those people who played on TTS or played on any tournaments actually in Poland lately got used to it. But other than that, I don't think there were so many things behind the scenes. Actually, we decided, maybe the organizers decided that the event will take place this year in Belgium, and it will take place in Belgium for next 3 years, if I'm not mistaken, in the sense to gather the money and have easier storage of everything, so we can go to that event in Belgium every year and not have problems with like third-party contractors. And other than that, I don't think there's much happening. Like, we are still waiting. I think more and more will happen closer to the date, because with all the changes about patches, etc., we don't really see that much happening, because, for example, there was an initiative to actually do some patches ourselves, but thankfully GW jumped with their own patch, which I'm very glad they did, because it was very much needed. But other than that, nothing much.
So player optimized terrain is not a topic that is on the table.
Thank God, no.
Okay. So are you that much against it?
Well, I think any terrain that's set and you know what you are preparing for is actually making the whole team preparation way easier and makes it more interesting, because you can anticipate anything and you can actually build armies for that, etc., which is actually happening all the time now, as we are playing all those games online with other teams. So thank God we actually have preset terrain maps, and I hope they never go back to anything that's random and you see what you're playing at on actually when you arrive at the venue.
Okay, if that's that. Well, I was actually wondering also about attendance, because I heard rumors that well, from that point of view, the event is expanding, and there are also people from Asia, for example, involved.
Yeah, actually, Well, we'll see at the event itself, right? But we had some people from countries that never actually attended the WTC wanting to captain, and there's Korea. There are some more Latin American countries, and I think there's Japan and even I think China. So like there's plenty of teams that never attended. I think Tunisia or something like that. I don't really recall the names. I'm sorry, but there were some teams that actually took part in all of those votings, which we were really surprised that they actually were included in the vote. Not in a sense that why are you here, but like actually you wanna play at this event. Like we didn't expect that.
Yeah, and they want to influence what happens.
Yes, which makes sense if they wanna attend, right? Especially if you wanna travel from Australia or Japan, right? You wanna play something you wanna play rather than playing something completely different.
Yeah, definitely. So, when is the event planned for? Is it the usual in August?
Yeah, I think it's early August. I don't really recall the exact date. I think it was first or second weekend as usual. And yeah, the location I think is already preset. I just can't remember it straight from the top of my head.
Right. So obviously the two of you, along with my son, are now the national team selectors. So maybe you can tell us a little about how the three of you got grouped together. Duda, maybe you can start the love story behind this.
There is no love story. Basically, there is nothing special about it. We just decided that all of us, it's like really want to do the job done very well, and we have the same attitude. So to just do it the best we think we could do, and we decided that our team would be the best. I think each of us thinks about the rest that they are the best to the job, and maybe the factor that was deciding here was that we all came from other cities in Poland, so we all play in other communities.
Yes, each of us is from completely different community in different part of the country. So this enables us to have insights into completely different people, let's say, because we have some people that just started playing in Warsaw that we wouldn't otherwise known, but I played against them in some small gaming clubs, our local game stores, etc. So I could get to know them, and the same applies to other cities. Like in case of Majson, I think the Poznań is pretty new as well to the competitive scene, and Wrocław is pretty small as well. So like you can have some up and coming players that could be found in those cities that wouldn't otherwise get visible, go on the radar. I don't know the idiom for that, but like
Get
allow
noticed.
yes, exactly, get noticed by us because they would probably play only in their local stores, right? Otherwise they wouldn't go to any tournament, etc. And we actually get the chance to see some new faces, which historically was something that allowed us to get some new very good prospects for our national team from those small cities, or maybe not so small cities but rather small communities.
All right. So what's your philosophy for choosing members of the team? Because last year, before we had a break as a podcast, we had Vladdi on back when I think he was one of the selectors, and his idea of building the team was pretty much, he made it sound like win at all costs. He really wanted to build a team of badasses or mofos that are not going to look back. They are going to run over anyone who stands in their way at all costs. Is that what you're aiming to do this year, or what does it mean? What Duda said, that you will do your best to build a good team.
It's like the combination of course, we want to have the best players to have the best results. So I think why is that so? Why are you asking about it? Isn't it the goal to just have the best team and to go to do the best result?
I'm asking about this because I'm curious as to, do you care about the chemistry in the team? Will you be picking based on pure skill, or will you be picking also based on, I don't know, for example, that someone can play 3 armies or 4, or someone is a good mate and you want to have fun while you play? That's what I mean by philosophy.
Okay, so personal connections don't matter at all. That's the first. So if I have a better player on this army and my friend on this army, I would totally pick the better player. But the team spirit is also very important. But in case of team spirit, I think that there is no problem in our community. I think there is no two people that would destroy the team if they are together. So let's say that's the smallest factor. But the big factor is gaming attitude, but not the skill, but the fair play and gentleman playing. So what people represent next to the table, not on the table, but next to the table. If they are cheating or not, if they are gentleman players, if they are cool, and like this, because we don't want to have dicks in our team. That's very big factor for me, for example. I don't know if Typhus agrees, but
Well,
I guess that
I was
shows.
a captain. I was a captain that got a player that was warned and yellow carded. Like, I don't want that happening again. So yeah.
Yeah, and that the thing that maybe we do not agree with Typhus, maybe I don't know, shows that the differentiation in selector team is also very important, because we have different points of view on all the peoples, all the
Yeah,
people and all the armies.
Mhm.
I would follow up on that because we, as there are 3 of us, which was the case a year ago, we can always do a majority voting on anything. So if guys think I'm out of my mind with what I think, well, then they just outvote me and I can do much about it, right? So it's a good way to make sure that in case someone is going crazy, others can actually decide that this is not a good solution.
Could you maybe expand a little bit on the topic whether the top 3 players from the Polish league somehow get onto the team, or top 1 player? Does this still happen in a season that, has been torn apart by COVID and so on? Is this still a thing, or has this changed?
Yeah. In this season, it's like we can select like all 8 people. So
Yes, because to give like a brief overview to people who are listening to this,
Exactly.
in case we do not have 8 major tournaments, so we have 3 classes of tournaments, and if we do not have 8 or I don't know 7 of those that are major ones, so let's say tier 1 and tier 2 tournaments, we do not classify the rankings into the team selection process. But if you have enough players, enough tournaments that actually happen during one season, then top 3 players from that ranking will automatically be selected into the team. And I think the rankings close at the end of the calendar year. So those players are known well before anyone else.
Yeah, that's right. And we've had a discussion whether we want to change that for the upcoming, hopefully, fully qualified season. And we've did 3 laps around the topic, and we're still sticking to the top 3, it seems.
Every year we go
Yeah.
back to it.
But it's always fun. There are sometimes interesting shitstorms. So yeah, that's that. In terms of selecting the people to represent our beautiful country, so have you got any sort of system where you know somehow qualify the players and pick from that, or anything you have the thought process behind selection, if you will?
I guess there's no point system or evaluation system. We of course gather the data about all the players and all the armies through the whole year, but in the end, as far as I understand it, we just do it by our subjective thinking. Am I right, Typhus?
Yes, yes. We didn't have any system set in place. We basically try to play as many 8v8 tournaments and force, and maybe not tournaments, games online using TTS. And when we have team meetings, we also try to play more 8v8 games. And we try to motivate people to go to the international tournaments, especially international team tournaments, so they get more experience. So in case it happens that they go to the WTC, they do not get stressed out because that's something completely new and an environment they weren't used to.
Yeah, and even the language difference all of a sudden, even though the rules are still in English, but you now have to play the game fully in English. That could be this factor as well.
Yes.
What about, because I think I've heard you guys somewhere saying that you want a non-playing captain this year. So maybe you can tell us a little bit what the reasoning behind that is. What is the difference of having a playing captain and a non-playing captain?
I think Duda can answer that question the best because he was actually in a team that had non-playing and playing. What was the difference for you?
The main difference is like if you have non-playing captain, he can fully focus on pairings and all the stuff, and he doesn't have to think about anything else. And then all 8 players is like focusing on their games. So these two things, pairings and games, are separate. And if you have one guy which first have to do the pairings and then has to do his game, it's like his mind is splitting because there is not enough time to fully focus on pairings and then fully focus on your army and on preparation for your games. And in this case, basically, as we observed many times, I think, earlier, the pairing captain didn't perform his best, and as he should.
Each one of us was a captain and playing captain once. Maybe not in the WTC team, but like Polish Team Championship or any of those 8v8 online screens that we've played against other teams. And we've noticed that whichever one of us was actually the captain, his games were way worse than what he would do when he was solely focusing on his gameplay. And I think I felt it the most when I was captain. I think it was 2017 or 16 in Salamanca. I think it was 17. I've done like hundreds of hours of actually thinking through the pairings, doing everything to notice whether there's a flaw, whether we should do something special during the pairing process. And then when I approached my games, I didn't actually have a very thorough plan. And before the tournament itself, I didn't get as many games because when we had team meetings to practice, I would tell players what they need to practice, right? So I was more focused on guiding everyone instead of making sure I would be in my best shape.
Okay, and in all honesty, when you were the playing captains, and that question goes to both of you, did that fact influence the pairings at any stage? So did you like want to get yourself a good pairing just to bring a good score and feel good, and obviously do a lot for the team?
Well, of course, it should be like we do the best for the team, not for ourselves, but maybe somewhere under our consciousness, we decided to do the pairings for us, but we never did it on our mind.
I don't think it was at any time. It wasn't like our sole purpose to have the best score. I don't think it was ever the case in case of our national team, as far as I recall. It's just something you cannot just forget that, for example, you're taking a very bad pairing, or for example, you're taking that very bad pairing and giving someone else who, for example, is newer with his army for that year, a pairing that he must win while you are sacrificing yourself. And that's something you have stuck in your mind when you do all of this. And even though you might try to be as objective as you can, I find that it's very hard, nearly impossible, no matter how hard I try.
So Typhus, I recall speaking to you in the past, and you said that you don't really enjoy singles anymore. That team tournaments are your element, and about the team tournaments, that the pairings are actually the most interesting part. So you have experience with that. You will be doing that. Is there any sort of pressure around that?
First of all,
Mhm.
I would say we are not set who will be non-playing captain. The fact
Okay.
that I was lately doing that role was just because Harlequins aren't in the meta. So it was convenient to do so because I wouldn't play in the 8-man team anyway. And we still don't know because the meta can shift a lot. So it's not set in stone when it comes to this discussion. But what was your question again? Sorry.
So is there any stress associated with being a captain and doing the pairings? Like, because probably if the pairings go wrong, the captain will be the person who takes the blame for it. So is there something
Actually,
like that?
for me, not really. Because pairings will be as good as the estimations of the players. So my point of view as a captain is to enable players to get as many games as possible, to be as confident as they can be in certain pairings. So when it comes to estimation tables, I get the most data I can and most accurate data. So then when I do the pairings, it's up to me to do them well. But of course, it's stressful, but it's kind of out of your reach sometimes what happens because people have completely different. We see it all the time when we do those 8v8 matches on TTS. We then share our estimation tables, and our estimations and opponent estimations vary a lot. Like both teams think they win specific matchup, and like you cannot really account for all of that. You can only account for your own estimations and work on having the best solution with what data you are provided. So I don't find it stressful as only doing the pairings, but what's more stressful would be actually not playing the game and watching all of those people play, because it's all out of your hands to actually see what will be the result, and you're like a bystander. Like you all know that feeling when you're watching, I don't know, a very good football game or volleyball game, that you're so invested into it, right? And you cannot do anything, but you are still very invested. And I think the same applies when you are non-playing captain. At least that's what I heard when I was talking with our coaches, with Kasper when he was non-playing captain, that you get so invested and it's all out of your hands. So I think that will be more stressful rather than doing the pairings themselves.
Is it all out of your hand? I mean, tell me, when you are at the event as a captain, for example, I mean, do you circle around the tables? Do you go from player to player and say, for example, I don't know, oh, Duda seems to be losing his match, so I don't know, Skark, you need to get a 20 or something like that. Is that what the captain does at the tournament?
Yeah, you're allowed to do that, but you still, in this edition, I don't think you really know what will be the score so early, and decisions that are the most impactful, I think, happen on turn 1-2. So actually, you can tell someone to play more aggressively, but you should play more aggressively from turn 1 in this edition. So although you can influence people in how they play, I don't think it will be so impactful this year because you are playing to score from first round, not like it was previously you score at the end of the game.
I really like the football analogy. Like you just watch the game on the couch, drinking beer, eating chips, and just shout at people. Yeah, my grandma would have done better. Either way,
That would be
back...
surely what I do, and surely what Duda would do, right?
Anyway, back to the topic. So how would you choose a non-playing captain for the team? What would be the factors? And let's not go into the topic on how the three of you see yourselves as potential candidates for the team in general, but how would you go about choosing or nominating a non-playing captain?
Well, basically, that's all that person needs to show us. It's the proof that he or she maybe can do the pairings well. But that's so complicated process that, you know, it's not like he came for 1 day, for 1 hour, for 1 day, and we just do 3 pairings and we say it's okay. It's a long process to estimate if that person can do it properly or not. So we will, I think we will be basing on our experience over people, because through the years we know people who already did the pairings on WTCs, on all the team tournaments earlier and like this, and we basically know who can do it properly. And maybe if that would be a case, we just ask that person, for example, not to play as a player but as a captain, and we believe that this person would understand that this role is the same important as a player, maybe even more important.
I would say even more.
Yes, so, you know, because some people might be like, no, I want to be a player because the fame comes for being a player, and there is something in it when someone is looking from far. But when you see it from inside and you understand the process, you know that the whole team and whole community would be very grateful if you are not, because it's kind of martyrdom, let's say, because you just loses your you just don't go and play. So you do the pairings, it's like half an hour before the game, and for 3 hours, like Typhus said, you just watch what will happen from the thing you did. And
Yeah,
Yeah.
you kind of forfeit
And I would add
your
one
own
more
glory
thing.
yeah,
for the team.
like
Yeah, go on.
this.
I would add one more thing, that there's also the fact that what I think will impact all of this is actually what armies are playable, or what armies would want in the team, because there's still 2 balancing patches, 1 chapter approved coming at us, and depending what will be actually competitively viable, some people play less armies, people play more armies, and the idea is that, for example, myself, when I recall the ETC where I was playing captain, I would say there were plenty people that would be better than me as a player, than what I shown when I was captaining as well. So that's a thing, that if there is a player who plays my army better, for example, or on a similar level, and that I can do the pairings and we know I can do the pairings, that's one solution. And I think this applies to all 3 of us. There are also people in the community that could do that as well. So we'll see.
Okay. I mean, I really like that statement from Duda. Oh, because obviously, you can be famous for getting 120 points at the WTC, but obviously,
And
if you're
doing
playing
pairings for yourself, huh, Sean?
yeah,
Or
but
Josh Roberts, Sean Nayden, huh? Those names you might recognize those.
Who's
obviously,
throwing shade?
if you're playing a hitter army and your captain gives you those pairings, I mean, that's what's least expected of you, isn't it? So yeah, really getting that, managing the team in a correct way really seems to be key to winning the event, and that's what's more important at the end of the day, isn't it? I think we've covered that. So you've done a boot camp recently. It's not even 2 weeks ago. So obviously the balancing patch came in at just the right moment. So whatever people planned to bring was made irrelevant 3 days before the event, let's call it. And what are your findings on the current meta after that? And maybe you can tell us a bit about how you've managed the boot camp. What was the idea behind it? How did you organize it? All that stuff. Whoever wants to go first.
At the moment, we have like a lot of candidates for being in a team. So signed people is like, I don't know, 40 like this.
I think 32 people signed initially,
Maybe.
or 36, something like that.
Yes, and finally for the bootcamp came like 24 people. So perfect to divide us into 3 teams of 8 people and play 3 games, 8 versus 8, each team versus each other. And the waiting team was like playing, inside themselves 4 versus 4. So we could practice the team compositions, we could practice the games themselves. And we, of course, were watching the people. How do they play? How do they behave? How do they estimate? And that was the day 1. And the day 2 was like 3 games and pairings. We decided that we want to check what are the results and how people behave in such pairings. So that was the plan for the bootcamp.
Right. So for that team that was playing itself, did you also like arbitrarily decide the matchups, or they had to go through the pairing process, divide themselves into 2 teams of 4, etc.?
No, because pairing process 4 versus 4 teams doesn't really make any sense. So it was like each game, how do they want, or we just said that you 2 play against each other and rest is free.
Okay. So what armies were played, and what do you think the current meta worldwide would look like?
I'll take that one. Basically, we've played most of the armies. I think Duda might correct me, but I think we've played nearly all the armies that we found viable competitively. Some we didn't have as many players playing them, but we could actually get some data from nearly all of the new armies that were changed in the latest balancing patch. I think the game is in much better state than previously. We had some huge surprises because we, for example, felt that Admech would be way stronger than it is, and it turns out it's not. It actually really fell down with both those nerfs, both point-wise and the flyer nerf. So that's what we found. We actually found that Renegade Knights, and Duda can talk more about it, are actually really decent into the current meta. And there weren't that many surprises. Like we found out that Drukhari are still obnoxious, and that Orks are still obnoxious. They just need to fill different units, and that we think that Renegade Knights, Thousand Suns, and Grey Knights and Drukhari will be like top dogs of the meta. At least that's my point of view, and I think that was our conclusion when we were talking after the event.
So Renegade Knights, does that also mean that Imperial Knights, or you cannot put an equal mark between them?
Not
I think
at all.
Duda can answer.
For me, not at all. There
So what's
is
the difference?
a lot of difference between them, which makes Imperial Knights much worse, for my opinion, at least.
So is it a difference in like shooting, or I don't know, relics, durability,
the ability to summon furies?
Yeah, so the summoning is like the biggest difference, which allows the Imperial Knights to do any secondaries, because basically if you play Imperial Knights, it's like you choose the engage on all fronts, you choose killing some kind of opponent stuff. We understand what I mean, and then it comes to the first secondary, and it's like, you cannot do the banners, you cannot do the Octarius, you cannot do any psychic actions like this. So here comes the problem.
Yeah, a limited choice.
Yeah.
To clarify, it's because you need to have pure knights to get the obsec on the small knights.
Yeah, of course we're talking about playing pure knights to have an obsec, because without it doesn't make any sense to play them. So if you can summon 2 units of infantry to place the banner, even if you get, I don't know, 5 points from it, from the banners, or I don't know, 4 points from 2 Octarius. It's still more than 0. And what's more, as long as I played it on the bootcamp, it really worked, and I did like, I don't know, I think I did in the first game like 13 points from the banners. Did you ever made 13 points from the banners playing all vehicle army?
No,
I can't
obviously.
say we did.
So that's the biggest difference from Imperial, and then comes the difference between Iconoclast and Infernal to the Mechanical Questories and Imperial Questories. I don't know how they called. So Iconoclast makes your all your knights fight much better because you get +1 attack. That's obvious buff. But the second thing is like you jump up with all of your multi attacks to AP -3, and then all the abilities that allows you to ignore the AP -2, you beat them. So your knight that is landing on 20 Skitari blob is killing, I don't know, a lot of instead of 2 or 3 because they are saving in 3+, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's the other thing. So your combat knights are much more viable, and if you need to fill your army with some more RIKs, which without the infernal buff on one of the weapons, I think don't do that much as people think, because that +1 to damage and +1 to strength for one of their weapons is very, very good buff for shooting guys that stand at the end of the table and just shoot.
Right.
So
that's
they
for
are.
the log,
I think
or
that
the...
Imperial that the Chaos Knights are better in all of these 3 things. So it doesn't make them like the top army. It makes them that they can fight for being somewhere in the top armies. You see, it makes them jump from the no pick to maybe we can pick them.
Yeah, that's amazing insight, actually. So a question on that, because one of the dominating armies now, I don't know how about Poland. I hope to hear about that from you. But one of the dominating armies abroad are the GKs with 5 Nemesis Dread Knights in different forms and shapes, but still Dread Knights. Do you think that the meta right now will shift more towards anti-tank and anti-vehicle? And how will the Renegade Knights fit into such a meta? Typhus, what do you think?
Well, first of all, you can already see that with all those Talai being brought into Drukhari rosters, and same applies to, for example, more Hiveguard just happening to be played, like those armies counter Grey Knights. And I found that even if you do build, for example, Drukhari list, you bring double Trueborn now, etc., etc. So you are surely bringing more anti-tank into your lists. But the problem is that 5 Nemesis Dread Knights are as durable as 5 War Dogs, essentially. And against certain weapons, they are less durable because they have toughness 6 instead of toughness 7. So what happens is that Renegade Knights have the critical mass of, I don't know, either you have 10 small knights and 1 big knight, or you have 14 small knights. And then you have the critical mass that no matter how much anti-tank shooting your opponent brings, there's too much high wound, high toughness, multi-wound vehicles in your list that at some point their anti-tank will just die while trying to kill enough of your models. So I think it's all about critical mass, and I think the same applies to Grey Knights as well, because people are bringing 5 Dread Knights, because when you bring 3, that's not enough, because anti-tank weapons can actually trade with 3. But when it comes to 5, you kill, let's say 2, there's still 3 remaining. So this is even more visible in case of the knight lists. And I think going forward, especially on tables like we could see in the recent GW tournament, I think knights will be stronger and stronger, especially on those lighter tables, because they struggle with hiding anyway, and they don't care about that, and they actually shoot pretty well. And they have pretty good shooting against Grey Knights. Duda can confirm.
Can I?
Like Maltas everywhere. Damage to
Yeah.
shots from Moiraxes.
Yes. So when we were playing on the bootcamp, the biggest problem for me running those nights was a lot of terrain, because basically I anyway couldn't hide all of the models because the bases are very big. So always one, two, maybe two of them could be seen by the opponent, because there is not enough space between behind the rune, and there is a lot of ruins. So I would be glad if there was no terrain there, because I would just run forward to the opponent, and his impact on my army would be exactly the same, because he was shooting anyway, no matter if I hide or not. But if there was no terrain, I could shoot him back and get to him faster. So I think that on the terrain, like as Typhus said, I don't know, it was the JW tournament, there was not a lot of terrain. Basically, this terrain that there was, it could be even the clear table. I think the impact on the game would be the same. So those House Knights would be even better.
Yeah, I mean, looking at the streams from the recent events, I know the OGT, the GW events you've mentioned, there's nowhere near as much terrain as WTC. So yeah, if the knights can't hide anyway, then obviously, and there are dreadnought lists that are apparently super good at these events, and we don't see them in Poland where we play WTC tables. We don't see them at all because they just don't perform where they don't get to shoot. So actually, an interesting one is what about Tyranids? You haven't mentioned them as I know as even a decent army. Did anyone play Tyranids and the obviously ridiculous now Hive Guards and whatever else the new book gave them potentially?
So we had some players, but during the whole tournament, we were thinking, when we were pairing meets, we were thinking about fielding them against armies they were struggling before, instead of those armies that meets could already win against, because the buffs would make those pairings even better.
Yeah, that would make sense.
And because of that, our perception of needs is kind of skewed, because they lost a lot of games because they played against, for example, Harlequins. They played against those Renegade Knights of Duda, and for example, Necrons that can just charge them turn one. So our perception is skewed. I think needs will be obnoxious because that army has no way of interacting with your opponent if you shoot with no loss shooting. But what we found in like team environment, there are certain armies that can just win against it. And we wanted to check that. And that's what we've done at the team meeting.
Okay. And I wanted to ask about an army that seems to be extremely popular, I think both in Poland and abroad. An army that a year ago, when I was, very much into the scene and very much into the meta, I remember that Death Guard used to be that shield army that I think you could, set out in the first pairing, and it would take pretty much anything and deliver a reliable score. Where is Death Guard now? What is your observation?
I think they can bring a reliable score of around 3 out of 20 points. That's my perception.
Yeah, so let's say that they already were struggling into the meta, and now, as we all foreseen, the meta will rotate into heavy anti-tank shooting and heavy anti-tank things. So they are good also against the Death Guard, so the Death Guard would be even deeper.
Okay. All right.
To give you a perception as well, in those 24 players, we had no Death Guard players because we thought that army doesn't even it never came through our minds to be in the team, except like a moment when we were thinking about countering Orks when they were
Yeah,
running 9 squid
just after
buggies.
the codex came, maybe, because
Yes,
it was
and
like
it
second
was,
codex in the edition.
but we realized that it's not very good very quickly as well, even
Yeah,
back then.
To imagine it, we were on the team event last year. Of course, it was before the Admech debuff, but still, I think it didn't change that much. So our player of Admech literally erased the Death Guard in turn first, and the
Ouch.
player of the Death Guard was like, I have never been deleted that many models in my first turn. He just surrendered because he lost like, I don't know, 1,200 points in turn first
Holy shit.
because just Admech did shooting.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think this will be even more visible with DevGuard was horrific against Knights previously. It's gonna be worse. It wasn't very good against Necrons. Now it's gonna be worse, etc., etc. And it applies to so many armies. And when you think that DevGuard relies on high toughness, -1 damage, expensive wounds, and last two codices were actually mortal spam armies, it doesn't help at all. So I think
Yeah.
Death Guard are really bad into the meta, and unless something drastically changes with how immobile and how actually frail they are, we don't think they will find a place in top 8 anytime soon.
Okay, that's really interesting. So to round off the let's say the Chaos armies, very quickly on Chaos Demons, has anyone brought them, or are they not even considered as a viable pick?
Yeah, I was summoning.
Well, yeah. Okay, so that's basically it, right? You cannot count on like a standalone army.
Well, I think there was someone else summoning as well.
That helps a lot.
But I think that here you should mention that on WTC, if you have demons in your team composition, you cannot summon. Is that right, Typhus?
Right.
Yes. So it's like we didn't even think about it.
Okay. And yeah, last one from that basket. So we did speak about, Grey Knights. How about their magical counterparts? So Thousand Suns. Has anyone brought those? Are they a meaningful force in the meta right now? What do you think about Thousand Suns? Duda, I'll start with you.
Yes. The Thousand Suns are in the meta for sure. I think three guys brought the Thousand Suns to.
Yeah, I think it was Walchuck and Krawat only.
Okay,
Kumba
two.
wasn't there.
But it's still a very good army. It's like better Death Guard for me. So the playstyle is pretty the same. You just set up the blob of your Thermis on the middle of the table and try not to die for a long time. But you have longer ranges, so you can threaten your opponent from bigger distance. You have a lot of mortals in the psychic phase, and you have a lot of tricks. You have.
And you are actually
you can-
mobile.
you can
I wanted to
displace your
say.
units. You can revive your units and such thing, which Death Guard lacks. So that's better Death Guard. I think that's a good to say about it. And I think that the Thousand Suns at the moment are totally into the meta and into the team composition.
Speaking of, and to summarize that part, so which armies, in your opinion, make the top 8? Duda, let's start with you.
Oh my god.
That's the worst question.
I cannot say it out of my mind right now.
So can we get to that
We
question in a
can
moment?
actually say what we brought against our current scrim against Canada. I think that's the best way to actually talk about it.
It ties up with the next question, but yeah, go for it then. So
we
what are you
had-
taking?
We had Neats, Thousand Suns, Orks, Admech, Grey Knights, Necrons, Renegade Knights, and Dark Elder, and we were thinking about Sisters somewhere in there, but they didn't make it this time.
Mhm.
So Imperium quite badly underrepresented.
Yeah, I think there's Grey Knights.
Well, yeah, but Space Marines as a very wide
Admech.
faction. Yeah, as a very wide faction, Space Marines don't make the cut. Sisters maybe potentially, but rather no. Guard,
Space
not
Marines are
really.
not even close.
Yeah.
Yes, they are in the dumpster. They are holding hands with Death Guard, in our opinion.
Yeah. Okay. So I wanted to hear that out loud. And one more, you mentioned Necrons, and you've mentioned them a couple of times. So, in the light of the data slate, in the light of the changes, more units getting core and so on, a viable army, right?
Well, previously it was our first defender in the tournaments that Duda went to, when there were tournaments in Poland in most scrims. They were very viable as first defender, and then they just got better. They are not an army in a sense of win, draw, lose that will be insane, but it's an army that will not lose big. Like, if you get more than 12-8 against Necrons, something happened that swung the game, because they play objectives so well. But they will lose most of the matchups, but they will lose them in a way that you were mentioning, Death Guard, that they will bring stable points. And in that sense, they are a staple in team composition for us. But we must say also that we have a player who mastered that army very well and mastered that exact role of that army, and by that we mean not a hitter, just a defender army.
Okay. One last question, because there is an army that seems to be getting a lot of play in the UK. Not in the States, not even in Poland, I think. But somehow in the UK, Iron Hands are performing really well out of all the Space Marine chapters. What are they doing to make that army work, and why is it not working anywhere else?
Nobody understands it.
Okay.
Well, we've
So they have a patent for it.
We've tried all types of Space Marines, and in our opinion, they just suck. They are overcosted, and when you compare them to Grey Knights, like, there's nothing to compare to. So yeah.
It's like we of course tried to, understand it, to divide it into pieces and try to find what makes them play so well, and we have no answer. So maybe you
I
should
think the answer
invite
is more
someone
open
from England.
tables, and having character dreadnoughts protected by the bodyguard rule, and that's all there is. Pretty much, they shoot well, but if you are not playing on a basically cornfield, you will not shoot much with those eight movement dreads. So what does it matter?
So they can't shine. And
Not
do
at
what
all.
they do
And we
best.
weren't even thinking about them in all seriousness. When we found out that Canada brought Death Watch, we were really surprised, because we never anticipated any Space Marine list, maybe except the curveball of Renegade, Raven Guard plus Ultramarines that relies on going first as an army to include in the team.
Hopefully they don't go booyah on on whoever gets paired with them.
Oh, we already have one player that said, I don't know how it works, so I'll probably bring 1 point. So we are completely prepared for that one.
Right, so you've mentioned Canada already, so obviously you've got 2 friendlies lined up, so Canada and Ireland, I believe.
Yes.
So what's next for the team? What are your plans to get those preparations going on in the near
You mean
future, at least?
outside those 8-man teams,
Well,
scrims?
no, maybe including those, because obviously you're playing these 2, but then maybe you've got something else lined up with, I know, another team, Germany, for example, or what have you.
We have England lined up as soon as they pick their first 6 players. They already have 4, as I recall, so they are picking another 2 or 3 in upcoming weeks. So around Christmas time, they will bring their A team to get someone to finally spunk us, hopefully. So we'll learn a lesson. But
and you can pay $300 for it.
Well, yeah. Exactly, for a dinner. At least they will take us to dinner first. That's great. Anyway,
Shade.
I'm all about that. So that's one thing, and another thing that's happening, we'll be doing all those 8v8 games separately, and we'll see on the go, like who's available, who wanna play. Maybe someone will want a revenge. We just won like 115 to 45 against a French national team. So we are looking into more sparing partners. But other than that, we are encouraging people to go to the team events that will be happening. We have few in Netherlands lined up, and the Alpine Cup that we already have. I don't know, Duda, you maybe remember 5 teams, 6 teams already lined up.
Like this.
So that's one thing, and another thing is more team meetings, basically. So to make sure that those players that do not play on TTS get a chance to play in the team comp and show themselves. Because without TTS, we might not know how up to date with the meta they are.
So do you intend to make or organize boot camps around the country, or will you be inviting people to come to Warsaw?
Duda?
We already have somewhere in mind to do the bootcamp in Poznań. As long as I know, there was a mention about doing it in Free City. You guys maybe know something about it.
Yeah, maybe.
So I think there will be boot camps around the country, but I don't know how many of them we can fit into half of a year.
And there's a pretty busy schedule of other tournaments, so we don't
Yeah,
want
very packed, kind
to
of.
impact frequency of other events as well.
So one
So yeah,
question.
there will
Yeah,
be
go on,
few
sir.
happening, and coming closer to the team selection and the tournament itself, I think we'll do more in central Poland to make sure that all candidates from whichever country they are, now I said country, city they are, from whichever city they are, and they can actually come and play without having to travel, like, I don't know, from Free City to Krakow, which is what, 600 kilometers?
Too
So,
many, definitely too many.
But Twig, you had a question.
Yeah, I had a question because you said, that the calendar is packed with events, and this seems to be something that I hear also about, calendars in other countries. So, like, even if you check Reddit and you see the meta summary of the previous weekend, you'll see that there were like, I don't know, 6 or 7 GTs, uncountable amount of RTTs. Does that mean, and this is a question to both of you, does that mean that the game is in a good place right now? Duda?
After the patch, maybe, because before the patch, it was very at the stage of sinking into deep mud, the same way as it was sinking at the half, from the half to the end of the 7th edition.
Yeah, to show you how bad it was, nearly all of the people who were candidates for the team started playing League of Legends instead of playing 40k. So it was really bad.
And then the patch came, and all the people are like, "Oh, they fixed the game. We can play it because it's normal, not the freaking way that you came to the table, you see the Admech against you, and you know that you can just pack your models and give away 20-0 because you have no chance to win this match." So after the patch, I think it's maybe not the good state even, but not bad also.
Not as bad as previously. There are more armies that are viable. There will be some oppressive armies like Tyranids, but it will be only Tyranids that will be really oppressive in the way they play, not Tyranids, Orks, and Admech at the same time.
Yep, and I guess as long as there is pluralism and choice, it's good for the game, right?
Yeah, because when you go for a 5-round tournament, if you get those bad pairings once or twice, it's not as bad as you get if you got them in nearly all of the games, right? You might be discouraged because you played against those cancerous armies, but other than that, you have some actually decent games where you actually get to play the game.
Yeah, I mean, definitely if you go to a 5-round tournament and all of those 5 games come down to a roll-off, then you'd know that this is extremely bad. So as long as you get to play at least 15 turns, then maybe it's not that bad.
That's a progress.
Yeah,
But
that's a
in all
progress also.
seriousness, I think it will be way better. I don't think, at least in Poland, we don't have that many Ork players, that many Admech and Needs players, and I don't think we'll have as many of them coming to the next tournament. So I think it might not be as bad in our case, but we don't know. In those wealthier countries, it might be even worse.
We'll just have to see, yeah.
But I'm pretty positive. I have positive thinking about all of this that's happening. I'm looking forward to events now, actually, because with slight nerf of Drukhari, I actually feel like I can bring out that army and don't feel slimy for playing it.
Yeah, it's definitely an improvement, and hopefully these patches do come out quarterly and are actually well placed.
We'll see.
Yes.
I have some doubts, but so
Yeah,
far, yeah, go for it.
The biggest problem with JW is like this patch was okay, but we all know that the next one can totally twist it and totally destroy the game again. So that's the biggest problem.
Yeah, sure. And
there
might
is
not.
no stability and I don't know, certainty about what they do, because they just add a random sentence in some rule and it destroys the game again.
True, and the timeliness is also not always timely, if you will. So even if it's now announced quarterly, there might be slippages as they used to be. But yeah, let's stay in the positive attitude, and hopefully that's not stuff that will happen. Right. I'm out of questions. Tweak, you want to add anything or ask anything? In fact.
No, I think our guests were their answers were very comprehensive, so I'm good.
Right. Guys, do you want to add anything from yourselves? I don't know, any plugs to maybe the Team Poland 3K channel or what have you?
Well, our content is Polish only, so I don't think anyone would like to see it.
Well, Danny might learn Polish if he'd listen to it.
Yeah. We already told him to. So.
All right, at least we've got that. In that case, thanks, chaps, for joining in, and obviously for your expert insight. And hopefully we'll get to speak again at some point in
If
a
you only
future
invite
episode.
us.
Oh, we definitely will.
Cool.
So it was nice to talk with you guys.
Yeah, it was a pleasure to have you. Thanks, guys.
All right, so that was all of us here from Contact Loss, the podcast from Poland about Company 40K, and you'll hear from us again real soon. Bye for now.
Bye, everyone.